What is up, guys? Welcome to episode 2 of Talk. And on today's show, I got Dennis Cortes. Dennis, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. My name is Dennis Cortes. I'm a designer and illustrator. I lead design at Satchel Health, and I build things at Use Quarry, which is a little company that I made with a friend of mine.
Cool. I mean, and that's also one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show. I mean, just because for as long as I've known you, you've always been like really this self-centered. You've always created these projects for yourself, and they've always been really successful. And you have all these like kind of, I wouldn't say miniature brands, but you have multiple brands that have been, relatively successful. And that's really why I wanted to, kind of sit down and talk with you, just because. Especially like you just said with Quarry, like you just started that up, I say about a month ago. I mean, realistically, you've been working on it for a while, right? But you just pushed it out probably about a month ago, give or take.
Yeah, I kind of like pushed it out more into the public. It was more of a quiet launch like 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah.
It was actually going to be something completely different, which is funny, but I really liked the name of it, and I kind of wanted to make some projects. Like I have my own personal projects, and then Drew has his own projects. Mm-hmm. And we have a few projects that we work on together. So I was like, you know what, let's just make this like a parent company. Because like you were saying, I have a bunch of little companies that I work on, and instead of saying like, I'm the founder of this, and this, and this, I just say, yeah, I'm the co-founder of Quarry.
Yeah.
And then
and I think that's like kind of cool because they're not, I wouldn't necessarily call them, I mean, like Quarry, yeah, I could consider that a company, but you have like a lot of these mini ventures. Like I know you have a few Instagram accounts that features like
like with Curating.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool because I know like you've been working on that for I'd say probably quite a few years now, like at least 3+ years, right? At least.
Yeah, Calligratype I started at the end of 2013, and then Illustry was a couple months after that, in 2014.
And kind of like what really made you want to like get into that kind of, I guess, say business, or really just get into Instagram and that posting, and like how, with you working all the time, obviously at the time when you first made it, you were still in school and doing freelance work and that kind of stuff, but like even now, like how are you able to post all the time, curate that content, and really just make sure that, all these brands that you're working on are like staying cohesive and up to date and all that kind of stuff? How's that work?
Well, for your first question, like how I got into it, it wasn't supposed to really be anything big. It was more like when I started it, there was none of these kind of Instagram accounts. Like now there's hundreds of them, but when I was doing it, there was none of those, and it wasn't really out of a need to or want to like get bigger or anything. It was more so, I want to collect stuff here because I find a lot of stuff on Instagram that I don't feel like transferring over to Pinterest onto my computer. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to post them here, and if people think they're cool, whatever. And then like a couple years later, as you know, it's just kind of exploded, and it's pretty cool because I came in at a time that nobody was really doing that. I think Calligratype was like the second or third account that was posting typography and stuff. It's kind of expanded out a little bit more now, but it was more focused on that. And, just getting those at a good time was kind of my advantage. Not really planned, but, it worked out for the better. And that's kind of like been a big thing to kind of launch my other ventures off of because, I have 500,000 or so followers that I can just post things to, and obviously making sure it's something that they're going to be interested in, not wanting to push that or take advantage of the users or anything. But yeah, and going back to your other question about balancing it, I don't think of myself as very organized. A lot of people will say that I am very organized, but I
mean, from an outward facing perspective, I think you're organized, and I could say the same thing too. Like I'm very disorganized, and I don't really know if that shows off, outwards, but to me, I'm very disorganized. But like for you, like I would think the way you design, the way you go about posting things, etc., like I think you would be a very organized person, but I guess that, each person takes on their own different kind of traits and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think more so what's gotten me quote unquote organized is just a routine. Like what you're saying about how I'm able to post all these things, like usually, I'm on my phone a lot. So if I see what's really cool is a little side note is Instagram has insights now for bigger accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see when there's the most like activity and stuff. So I'm like, oh, it's 10:30 or 11. Like this is when most of the followers are on. So I'm like, okay, I should probably post. I go in. I usually have a couple screenshots already saved up just for my own feed. Just like, oh, I like this. Let me screenshot that. And then I just post it because of the timing. And then it's kind of the same thing for Dribble. It's like, well, I've been working on a couple things here. Let me just pull something from this project and this looks really good. Okay, I'm going to post this because it's 9:30 in the morning. That's usually when I post my Dribble stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just like, I really like having all these projects going on because I never get bored. And I'm the type of person that I really like to work on everything because I like to be in charge of the branding. I like to design all the websites.
Mm-hmm.
I like to code all of our websites. I like to take care of the marketing, the business stuff. Some of that sucks, but being involved in it and being kind of self-reliant for the most part, self-reliant being me and Drew, kind of being self-reliant in that and having to kind of push myself to do that. It's a lot of fun for me, being involved in all that and being able to work on so many different things because, as you know, I'm passionate about, branding, illustration, and UI and UX. Mm-hmm. And I basically get to do all of that and like learn code and business. And it's just like resume builders that I basically really, really enjoy and have a lot of fun with.
Yeah, I think that's like really cool because you're taking, like, it's not just a project, it's a resource that, people can actually use, whether it's you or just someone else. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's really cool, with Quarry is that, you're creating like these miniature brands that are actually not just, simple projects that you can put into a portfolio, but like they're actual living, breathing things that people can use. And I think that's cool, especially like, what is it, drones.com? I don't know the specific URL, but like that drone site that you have, I think that's really cool. Like it's not a website where you can buy drones, but it's a collection of materials and stuff like that where you can go find stuff. And I think that's really cool. And I think it's a bit unique because you don't see many sites out. Well, I mean, there are sites like that, but there's not many sites that are just like designed very well where you can go look, be like, oh, wow, I didn't know this existed for that product or whatever, and that can be like a kind of like a gateway for you to find that product. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of like the main way that I find my project ideas is kind of notice. I mean, it goes for most businesses. It's like, just finding an emptiness in a market and kind of taking advantage of that. And I really like to blend my passions into that. So if I can bring something that's well designed, easy to use, and better than the competitors, then why not do it? So that's kind of where I get my inspiration from, and kind of check myself for whether a brand idea will be successful or not. But yeah.
Now, going back to your Instagram accounts with that kind of stuff, like I'm assuming that probably has brought you a lot of projects and client work. Like how has that worked out for you? Like from a freelancing perspective, like has that been really helpful or has it been negative, or how's that been working?
Well, specifically from the Instagram accounts, I've met quite a few people through that Instagram account, through Calligratype mainly, because it's funny because I'll meet up with designers or like go to a meetup or something and I'm like talking to someone, they're like, oh, you made Calligratype? Like I love that account or whatever. Or vice versa, they'll reach out to me through Calligratype, like DM Calligratype directly, and I'll be like, yeah, let's definitely meet up. And I've met a couple people through there. In terms of freelance projects, though, nothing really specifically has come up because, to be honest, you get a lot of spam accounts and accounts that, those bad clients, you can tell it's like not going to be a good relationship or a good fit.
Yep. And that's kind of what I was expecting. Like I thought, maybe out of the bunch that you maybe had one or two, but generally, again, with all those types of accounts, unfortunately, that's right. Like I guess the way I see it is like if someone really like wants you, they're not going to be, you know, generally going through an Instagram account. They're going to go, or whatever it may be, it's going to be through other means. And I think that's, while it's good, like you're able to meet people, you know, sometimes you do get that kind, you know, that spammy, whether it be recruiters or just projects in general. It kind of sucks. But like meeting, like, I mean, personally, like through my social media channels, like meeting people, like I've met people through, you know, small businesses and been able to like help them out with their startups and that kind of stuff. And I think that's really cool. And I thought, out of all that, I thought that maybe like with Calligraphy, I thought I thought a lot of type projects would have came out of that actually. So it's actually had the more of an adverse effect than I would have thought.
Yeah, recently I haven't really been wanting to take on freelance projects, to be honest. Just focusing on quarry stuff. So what I've kind of done with that is made more of a network. Like, as you can tell, if you go to any of the websites, it'll say like a quarry company or something.
Yeah.
So what's cool is we get a lot of traffic through all the avenues that we have. So I'll usually get a lot of traffic from that, and usually here and there people will reach out. You know, I have a guy that I'm going to San Francisco in a couple days, and he reached out to me because he saw one of Calligraphy's posts and like led him to Corey's website, which led him to my website and things like that. So it's kind of like a spider web effect that I'm sure a lot of us can kind of relate to. You know, you have all these connections and like maintaining your Dribble account, your Twitter, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it all kind of connects to each other, which is very important, I think, in building your personal brand.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially like people who are, I guess, didn't have the opportunity. I guess because, again, with most of the people that are going to be on this show are mostly going to be people that I've known for a while, and that's the reason why I know them is because of the internet. And most of us have, you know, we were fortunate enough that we were kind of born from the internet. And it was like the same thing with Nicholas the week before. You know, without the internet or without you, like, because like going back from the beginning, like you started out, like, I'm sure a long time ago, like doing stuff on YouTube, and that YouTube stuff led into your freelance career, and then so on and so forth. So I think a lot of us kind of are fortunate enough that we were able to kind of early on get adapted to this internet way of designing, and I think that's kind of cool how we've been able to kind of push off that. And going off that point, like let's go back to more of like how you, like, what made you get into design, and then really off that, like, where did you start designing, and then really where did you see like, yes, I want to do this for a career, and then like where at what point did you really see that kind of take off?
Oh man.
Sorry, I kind of threw like a whole bunch at you.
No, you're good. It's just I'll try and keep it short. I mean, I think both you and I came to design through YouTube. So basically I did what a lot of designers do. It's funny because a lot of designers get into it this way, but you know, I was really big into gaming. I still kind of am. I play like a couple nights a week, but you know, I was big into the Call of Duty community. I kind of figured out that people were paying like $10 per banner or something like that. So like, oh, I'm in college, I could use a couple extra bucks. So I was like, let me learn this. You know, Photoshop will be easy. Yeah. And then like, it's funny because the first couple banners, it's like, yeah, I did get into it for the wrong reason, for the money. But after those first couple banners, I just absolutely fell in love with design. Like, being able to create something from nothing is such a huge power. Like, I think we take that for granted a lot, but if you step back and think about that, it's just a huge power that you have. Whether it's a logo or like a website idea or a brand idea that helps out people, like, it's just crazy.
And I think,
but anyways,
like going back to like how you're doing all these side projects with Quarry and that kind of stuff, like I think that, like going back to my personal experience, like I think that's really what drove me, was again, you know, creating something from nothing and really creating a brand that was my own. Because like you said, I started off on YouTube as well, and I was at this point where like, well, I could either pay someone to do it or I can do it, and I can really create my own personal unique brand that's, you know, that's something that I made and I can be proud of. And I think that's really what drives a lot of designers. And I think that, you know, especially for you, like the fact that you're able to create a brand and then be proud of that brand and have it work, I think that's the ultimate gratification and really is something that keeps us pushing for more. And I just kind of wanted to touch on that, but what were you saying?
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, so back to how I got back into design. So after that, like I kind of branched off from the Call of Duty stuff. You know, I was still in touch with a few people, still had a couple friends there, but I kind of branched off into doing my own thing because I kind of discovered branding, illustration stuff. Kind of, you know, you go on Google, you're looking up on Pinterest and stuff like that. You figure out these sites. You make all these connections, find people on Twitter. So, you know, I kind of branched out and fell in love with branding and illustration. And that was kind of my focus for a couple of years because in school, it's funny because like a couple months after I got into banner design, I was like, you know what, I'm going to switch majors. And when I got into that major, I was like complete and utter crap compared to everybody else. So, you know, branching off on my own and really getting into branding and illustration, I was practicing for hours and hours and hours every day. And I just really fell in love with that kind of stuff. And over the next couple of years, I got better and better and better because I was working a lot harder than everybody else that was going to my college. You know, I was putting in the after hours, 6, 8, 10 hours a day, stay up till 3 or 4 in the morning, get a couple hours of sleep and go back to school the next day and repeat that process.
Yeah.
And, you know, just keeping up my dribble and things like that. And one day, you know, this guy reached out to me because we were both going to the same dribble meetup. And he's like, dude, I really like your work. We got to meet up. Like, I just want to talk with you. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, this will be cool. And it's funny because I was going out of my comfort zone, going to a dribble event. You know, I'm super introverted, so
yeah,
it was weird for me to do that.
That was like the same thing. When I went to my first dribble meetup, I was
just dreading it.
I was like 16, 17, and it was at a bar, so I couldn't drink either. So I felt like,
oh, dude, that was the same thing for me.
It was really bad. But like, I'm so glad that I did it because if I didn't, like some of the people I met there, I work with now, and like if I didn't like go there, like, you know, my career could have been drastically different.
Yeah.
And I think like while it may be scary to like go do that, especially at such a young age, I think it's really important.
It's a huge advantage. Like, if anybody that's listening, if you ever have the opportunity to do it, go and do it. Please do it, because the people that you're going to meet there, you don't know what those connections are going to be in the long run. Like, going back to my story, it was the same thing. I went to a bar and I was, I think 18 or had just turned 19. So I couldn't drink, and I had to leave at like some ridiculous early time because they didn't let people in if they couldn't drink. But I met with this guy, and, you know, we just talked for a little bit, and it's like after that I was like, okay, see ya. You know, we didn't really talk for a couple months, and then he reached out again and he's like, hey dude, we should grab dinner and catch up and see how things are going. And I went to dinner with him, and I was telling him how I was going to apply for a job at Panda Express because I was like, you know, in college, I didn't have any money. I really needed to start making money. And he's like, dude, you're way too talented for that. How about this? I'm going to hire you for my company and we'll see how it goes. So like, I met this guy, and then randomly in a couple months, he just offers me a job right then and there instead of going to work at Panda Express. So it was like life-changing for me.
Yeah. And I think like that is what people kind of don't take advantage of. Like, people don't see the benefit. Like, a lot of people that I went to school with, you know, people that are, they kind of were interested in graphic design in high school, but not really, and they didn't really know. So when they went to school for graphic design or whatever it may be, they kind of gave it their half, or not all. And I think like a lot of people don't see the benefit of keeping just up to date with their portfolios and such, and just regarding networking are kind of more afraid of, for some reason, are afraid to like just really just talk with people and really just keeping their portfolios up to date. And I think that's the one thing that I see now with being a few months out of school. If you're not visible as a designer and you're not keeping your portfolio up to date, employers aren't going to want to hire you, just because, first of all, one, you may not be visible, so they're not going to be able to find you in the first place. Or two, while give or take, like some people say like, oh, having a updated portfolio means you're not working enough, or vice versa. And it's kind of a weighted scale there. But I think personally that if you're not keeping up to date with your portfolio, at least not updating it at least every few months or whatever, then you're really losing out on the opportunity for whether it be recruiters or just outside people, whatever it may be, just to see what potential you have. If people are looking at your work and it's almost a year old, almost 8-9 months old, then really people are going to be interested in, because they really want to see the motivation. And I think if that's the one thing that we can both say, is kind of just make yourself visible, and don't be afraid to network with people. And especially the way I see networking too, and I don't know if you could see this as well, but I don't see networking as like a business, or no, I shouldn't say business, but as like a business venture. I see it as, oh, let's go meet like some new friends, not like, oh, let's go meet someone so I can make money or whatever it may be. And I think you can probably say something similar to that as well.
Yeah, I think if you just approach it in the right way, it might be kind of awkward at first. Like I was saying, I'm super introverted, but if you just kind of approach it as like, I'm going to make a new friend, just see how it goes, see if we have similar interests, and like everything takes off from there. Like you don't really need to worry about the rest of it. Mm-hmm. Like the most random connections come up from the most random people for me. Yeah. And I think that happens to everyone.
Yeah. I mean, and to be honest, the best jobs I've ever, I shouldn't say best job, the best freelance jobs I've ever gotten were through just random encounters. It was really weird. Like, I guess about 8-9 months ago, I was on the train and I was just talking with my friends about design work and a few of the stuff I've been doing. And just out of the blue, this guy in a suit comes over to me. And like, this sounds like the most cliche thing in the world, but literally a guy in a suit came over. He's like, hey, are you a graphic designer? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, I heard you talking about like your this little business you have, because I was talking about Lightsaber, which is again with Nicholas and Paolo, and I was talking about the stuff we were doing, and he just overheard it, and he's like, hey, here's my card, I have a startup and I would like to talk. And it was just, even that alone, like it was the most random encounter in the world, like just some random dude. And just like that simple, like even though it may not seem like networking, that in itself was like the best networking opportunity you could have. Just being vocal about, like, if especially as a designer, like you should be vocal about your career. Like you do it because you were passionate and you love it. And me being vocal about it just to my friends was able to just give me that connection that I wouldn't have gotten if I wasn't there that day or whatever it may be. And like you said, like the most random encounters can provide the best opportunities, and obviously that has shown benefits to you as well.
Yeah, like I was saying, that's what got me my first job at this company called Verasa. It's just like a product kind of agency. They create products and also make their own products. It's pretty cool. But that's when I got my first job at 19. And that's kind of what sparked my interest in UI and UX. I hadn't touched UI, UX. I didn't even know what it really was, to be honest. But he hired me and he's like, yeah, you can do branding and illustration, but you need to learn this. And it's funny because I was absolutely terrible, but I was lucky enough to have this guy that kind of served as a mentor for the next year after that, kind of helping me push through that kind of slope. Like I was making up for it in my branding and illustration work, but he kind of like really helped me get into the product scene and really improve on that. And unfortunately, we had a falling out. It kind of sucks because he was a big mentor for me, but he did really help me and kind of established a few things in my mind that really helped me stay motivated and really push through the last 2 years of school. And kind of during that time when we were having our falling out, actually, this is funny because we're going back to connections. So an alumni that went to the same school that I did, that graduated a couple years before I did, he asked one of my teachers, he said, "Hey, we need some illustration for our new startup for our website. Who's your best illustrator in class?" And, it's a class of I think 20 designers. And I was one of the few that did mainly illustration. So he recommended me. And I talked with them, and what kind of started out as a freelance job of doing some animated icons for them, over the next couple months, I was doing contract work, and then it turned into a part-time job.
Do you mind if I interrupt? If I'm thinking correctly, are the animated icons you're talking about, were they the medical ones?
Yeah, those were the medical ones.
So that was where it kind of started. Okay, I do remember.
Yeah, that was the freelance job that I did for them. That went on their first version of their website. That was honestly awful. It was absolutely awful.
The icons or the website?
No, the website, because they were just starting out, and it was just really, really rough. Just kind of to get something out there.
Well, I don't know what the previous version looked like, but from what I can, what I see now, I mean, it's obviously come a long way, because right now it looks really nice.
Yeah, we spent a couple months on that one. But yeah, so at that time they were named Octavis. Now you guys probably know them as Satchel Health through my kind of work that I've been doing with them. But yeah, it started as a freelance job, turned into a part-time job. And then, right after I graduated, they offered me a salary that was more than double the amount that you usually get when you get out of school. Yeah. So that connection, that's the most random connection. And it pretty much set me up for life. If I didn't have that job, I honestly don't know where I would be right now, because, they let me work remote. They teach me and help me with development. I'm leading design there at 20, I just turned 22 years old, and I'm already a lead designer somewhere, and, learning code, like I said, and being involved in the business decisions there. And all that from the connection, like you were saying. But, it's super important to kind of work hard, keep those connections. Like you were saying, keeping your portfolio updated. And it doesn't even have to be a portfolio, really, like a website. Yeah. Because I know, at first, you don't know how to do it. You don't have the time to do it. You don't have the money to pay for the hosting and all that. So, just your Dribble or your Instagram or something, like you were saying, keeping all those connections and kind of making a spider web of them is very, very, very important, because you never know when those connections are going to meet up somehow.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the time, especially what I notice is people, even though you don't know it, people are always looking at your portfolio, and you don't know who is. And I think what a lot of people, especially people I know, they miss out on opportunities that could be really beneficial for them, but they're being bypassed because, they're not keeping their portfolios up to date and with that kind of stuff. And I think especially, again, I'll emphasize it again, as a young designer, the best thing you can do is keep your portfolio up to date, and not just keep it up to date, but keep pushing out the content and that kind of stuff. And I think while it may be hard to be motivated and, post all the time, I think you got to start setting goals for yourself and kind of push towards it slowly. And
yeah, because like you were saying, I will say that really sets, I mean, I can speak for you and me, we're set up so well, and we're very lucky for that. But also it comes from us being very passionate and setting ourselves apart from the other students, like you were saying, that don't really do graphic design outside of school. They didn't, the kids that I graduated with did not touch graphic design outside of school. Yeah, and I think, and I was actually about to touch on that.
That's something that, I don't understand. I do understand, but I don't understand. Especially if you want to be a graphic designer, as a career, you just be oh, maybe I want to be a graphic designer. I'll just see how it goes. No, as like if you want to be a graphic designer, it's because you want to be passionate about it, and that's what I encountered a lot at my school, and I'm sure it happens a lot. But I think the reason is because like people like me and you, obviously there's a whole bunch of us that have been, I guess you could say, born of the internet, but that's also a small percentage of us. And when you really think about it, like that's why we're kind of lucky, because there's not many of us that had this opportunity to, start so young. But then going back to your point, yeah, like I know a lot of people that once school was ended, like no Photoshop, no, didn't touch anything, no Illustrator, no nothing. They didn't try to like try new programs and that kind of stuff. But it was always one of those things where like if I didn't touch any programs like after school, like I felt like I was wasting my time. And
you feel so unproductive, and it's like how can you say you're passionate and stuff, but you don't have the motivation to go out of your way to, and it's investing in yourself. It's not even the fact of like you're going out and doing something for somebody else and it's like, oh, this sucks, like whatever. Yeah. It's you're investing whatever you put in, as cliche as it sounds, whatever you put in is what you're going to get out.
And it couldn't be any more truer, especially for our career. Like, and that's the thing. Like I know some people from my school may be watching this as well, but like, and there's talented people at my school, but I think a lot, like I always got like, this might make me sound like an asshole, but like some people always were like, oh, like, what, like, why you do this or why, like, you do that? It's like you shouldn't have to ask why am I doing it. It's all of us should be just passionate. Like we're all in this doing this because we love it. And if you're questioning why I'm doing something, then like what are you doing in the first place? Like I don't like. That was always something I struggled with, and I always tried to keep telling my friends, like my one friend, like for an example, like he's a good designer, but right now he's kind of stuck in a job that he's not particularly happy with. And I always try to tell people like you said, you are what you put into it. Like you don't have to be, like you don't have to think like you have to be stuck in that job. You can get any job you want as a designer, especially as a freelancer. Like you are the one that makes the jobs. Like if you say, hey, I want to freelance for them, then you make that job opportunity. You reach out and you make it possible. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. And I don't know if it's because of a lack of motivation or they're scared or that kind of stuff. But like, again, like you said, like I think it happens at a lot of schools where it's just people, once school ends, that's it. They don't touch Photoshop and they don't do anything. And I think that's a little, I think that's sad just because, there's so much opportunity and I think it's kind of wasted time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's go back to more about Satchel Health. Like really, especially since pharmaceuticals is such a vast market, I guess, and especially what you guys are doing. I mean, you could talk a little bit more about it because I kind of know what you guys are doing, but kind of not really. Why don't you talk more about exactly what Satchel Health is and what kind of design solutions you're kind of creating for them, or design problems, I should say.
Yeah, we're actually working on our website to kind of explain what we do more, just because we're still kind of finishing out the details on things. But to give a little rundown, as much as we hate to say it like this internally, it's the easiest way to explain it to people externally. It's basically like a Skype for doctors to be able to provide better care to patients in skilled nursing facilities. So if you don't know what a skilled nursing facility is, it's basically an in-between between going to a hospital and going home. So instead of sending a patient straight to home from a hospital, because it's expensive to keep them in the hospital, they send them to a skilled nursing facility. And the reason that it's cheaper to do it here is because the staff isn't as good. There aren't really as skilled nurses that are there in terms of when you're referencing a hospital. So is when they're taking care of them, if there's something wrong and they don't know what to do, they usually end up calling an ambulance, which is obviously a couple $1,000s to take them to the hospital and to bring them back afterwards.
So you're
So that's kind of where we come
in
in.
a way, kind of eliminating the middleman in so to speak, I guess.
Yeah, and since the nurses don't have access to doctors there, what we do is we have this product, which is basically like a cart, like a medical cart, that it runs our software, and it works as kind of your in-app dashboard with, like, you know, you can keep track of the patients that you have going on and the doctors that are online, and you can get in calls with doctors, and the doctors can be able to see the vitals and things that are going on live, and be able to, you know, like, see the patient's records, things like that, and also get a video feed. And, you know, if there's like a scope that they want to use to get something seen better, it shows up on the screen as well. So just providing the tools for these remote doctors to give, you know, a better diagnosis for the nurse, so that they don't have to call a hospital. It's a lot cheaper, and we're providing better care to patients at these skilled nursing facilities like that.
Yeah. Now, are any of your services going towards like lower income areas or even third world nations? I see. I'm assuming you're trying to work more domestic market first and kind of broaden from there. But is it going also towards more of like trying to help with lower income areas and that kind of stuff?
I don't really have a say in that, but that's not kind of what we're doing for now. We would like that, but it's more for private corporations now, just to, you know, obviously build up the company's revenue and things like that.
Okay. Now, you said earlier too, like, it was tied to, like, doctors can see vitals live. Like, do you, like, is it like automatically connected to the services, or is there like equipment that Satchel provides and that kind of stuff, or is it just automatically provided within the service?
So within the cart, it's like a medical cart with like a keyboard and everything.
So that's what you meant by cart. Okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. There's the medical. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they have like all the scopes that they need there.
Mm-hmm. So that software is tied into those carts. Okay.
Yeah, all that hardware is connected wirelessly through Bluetooth to the cart.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and it kind of sucks because I'm, you know, since it's such a huge company and it's really private because it's healthcare and things like that, I'm not really allowed to show too much. As you can probably see from my dribble work, you don't really see too much from Satchel, which kind of sucks.
And when you show stuff, it's more of like the general illustrations and
I'm not really ever allowed to show app stuff. You know, it's just private, which kind of sucks, and that's kind of where my side projects and all that come in. But yeah.
Now, going back to, and I think like especially what differentiates you between like other designers, especially from me, like you are like the master of all skills. Like you can illustrate, you have good typography skills, and you can also code. And I also know that like you kind of coded for a while, but you really got into the code, and I guess you could say in the last year and a half where you really started digging into it. And you said you can, and I guess you said you kind of learned that a lot from Satchel. Why don't you talk a bit more about like how you started to learn code, and really how that has affected your career so far, and also more of like personally, how do you think like coding is to you? Like how much of a skill is it important? And I don't really know, I'm like stuttering on my words, but like,
yeah, I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, I did code a little bit on and off, just like HTML and CSS, really basic stuff, just because I had some classes on it. So like at those points, I got really into it, kind of liked it, but then I just fell off. But actually, it's only been, I think, 4 months that I've really gotten into it, 4 or 5 months.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that, which I was actually really happy with, is part of my agreement with Satchel is coming on, would be I would be a designer, but also have to be a front-end engineer, because there is a lot of design work, but we've gotten to a point where we need more on the code side of things to be able to implement things a lot quicker, and, you know, be able to be self-sufficient. So that was kind of one of the agreements, and they agreed to like help me with everything, because it's really cool because I work with some of the best developers in Nashville, which is awesome. So kind of having those guys on hand, it's a huge blessing for me to have that. But yeah, it's been like very paramount to have that. Yeah, so getting into the personal side of code, it's like a big debate of whether designers should code and stuff. And not to get too much into it, but I've kind of been the person that has always liked to be the jack of all trades, like you were saying, just because I get really bored with when I'm doing the same thing over and over. So being able to be, in branding, illustration, UI stuff, and code is a lot of fun for me. So I'm lucky that Satchel kind of pushed me into that development role, because it's really been paramount in me being able to push out my own products, because it's one thing to be able to kind of put up an illustration on Dribbble or, a logo on Dribbble, but to like flush out a whole website, like messing with the DNS stuff and being able to go into the code and experiment and do all these really cool things that you see online and being able to call that yours, is personally for me, it's just like a humongous satisfaction and just like something that I'm super proud of. And, it just takes that level of kind of, being able to make something from nothing that we were talking about earlier. It takes that to like a whole different level for me. And so like, I'm not going to say you need to code. Again, that's a personal preference. If it benefits you and how you like to work, that's good. If not, that's fine. I think focusing on design is something that's should be really respected as well. And it's hard to be able to do both really, really well. I like to think that I do it well, which is great, but some people need to focus on one or the other. It's hard to kind of have that creative, but also, kind of analytical side to things.
Mm-hmm.
But if you,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Just that, like if you approach code in a certain way, like you may think it's like all this math and all these equations and stuff, but it's really not. Mm-hmm. If you approach it in the right way, because there's so many opportunities to, get creative with things. And like I said, make your own stuff. And even at work, trying to tell a developer to move something 2 or 3 pixels to the left, they're not going to want to do that. So instead, I can just take a minute at work, go ahead and put in that code and push it up, and it's already done.
Yeah, and I think that's like really cool about like your situation, is because your company's big, but it's also not big in the sense of like development scale. And I think that what's really cool is that, like you said, like most people have to focus on one or the other, but you have the opportunity where you're kind of forced into, doing both. And I think that's really the only way, like, I feel like I personally would learn. But at this point in time, for me, like, I feel like coding has been, like, this lacking thing that I know how to do basic code, but it's still, like, to your level, like, it's still something that's lacking. And I think, again, like, you're very fortunate that you were able to kind of, like, be pushed into this role where you had to do both. Because I'm at this point right now, especially working at Comcast, or working at any big company, to be honest, or any large scale agency or whatever it may be, you're not going to be doing multiple roles like that. You're generally going to be sticking to one, because there's going to be multiple other people that are doing the coding for you. And I think, like I said, you're very fortunate to have that. And I think that's kind of really cool, because essentially you're set for life now, because now you can be like, hey, I have these skills. And I think people really, again, that will set you apart from people like me. That will like push you like way over the top, because not only can you read code, you can understand code and implement that without, like you said, going back and forth with the developers and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and having that level of control and those skill sets to have, it's crazy, and it's super beneficial. Kind of like what you were saying, where it's kind of like a missing piece. That's kind of what it was for me. Honestly, I'm not like super good at it. Like I'd say I'm very medium, probably almost more on a beginner side of things, but I can launch out my own website and things like that. But I'm literally learning something every single day because I've been practicing code, for like 3 months, 4 months, like every single day. So if you can motivate yourself to do that, like I cannot recommend it more. Even trying it out, like try out a Treehouse 7-day trial and see if you like it. Start with the basic courses and things like that, because you really don't even need to get too advanced. Like there's so many things that you can do with just HTML and CSS. Like if you look at pretty much any of the websites that I have, they're all just static HTML and CSS. There's barely any JavaScript. I'm just now getting into JavaScript, and the way that I'm doing it, I'm not actually like building interactive sites. There's static sites that are being rendered with JavaScript, if that makes sense, not to get too technical.
No, yeah.
But like there's so many, I don't know, for lack of a better term, there's so many hacky ways to do things.
Yeah.
Like I figured out a lot of loopholes to be able to, like sell things. Like I'm about to launch a new company here pretty soon that relies heavily on, purchasing. And that's a huge security risk, and coding all that. There's no way I'd be able to do it on my own. And I don't even know how to implement Stripe. So I went through this other company. It's called Plasso. And it's just like a hacky way that I thought of. And it's like, oh, I can do this and have them buy things here. So like, even if you can't do something to the extent of like my coworkers can do, like there's so much you can do with literally just plain HTML and CSS.
Yeah, I'm kind of doing it like the reverse way. Like I kind of know HTML and CSS, but obviously not to your level. But right now what I'm kind of trying to do, I'm doing it all kind of backwards, where I'm trying to learn CoffeeScript, which is obviously just another version of JavaScript. And the reason why I'm trying to do that is because what I'm hoping is I've been doing a lot of prototyping at work and that kind of stuff, and a lot of prototyping tools have been such as Framer, use CoffeeScript, and it's something where what I'm trying to do is like, well, if I can learn CoffeeScript while it's very different from HTML and CSS, like if I can get Java or CoffeeScript and JavaScript on a kind of somewhat basic level, then mastering HTML and CSS will be a little bit easier. Logically, that's what I think in my head. Will that happen? I don't know. But right now I'm kind of doing it backwards, and eventually I would hopefully that can,
I think you can start either way. Like the main reason I wanted to start with HTML and CSS first is because it makes more sense to me, and I've already dabbled in it a little bit.
Well, you really should. Like if you are starting to code, I mean, it would be stupid to start off with JavaScript or CoffeeScript.
If you're a designer, like
yeah,
it's a no-brainer to start with HTML and CSS.
Because then if you go jumping straight into JavaScript and that kind of stuff, you're gonna miss out on the basic like fundamentals of what coding is.
And honestly, JavaScript is like super daunting and intimidating when it comes to like, if you're for your first language, like HTML and CSS is a lot easier to get your head around, I think. So
which is why I want to try CoffeeScript, because it's like a stupid dumbed down version of JavaScript. So in my head, I'm just like, it won't be that bad.
Yeah. Did you have any other questions? I think did anybody DM you or anything?
Yeah, I had one person DM me. I kind of said it a bit too late. Someone randomly mentioned it when I was getting off the train, and it's probably something we should do from now on, is have people shooting questions, because I think that could be better. But this one comes from ZGravHD on Twitter. His question is for the both of us. He says, how did you make the transition from doing designs for YouTubers to bigger projects for clients outside of that niche? We kind of pretty much already touched on this. I guess I can talk more, since you already kind of talked more about it. I'll talk a little bit more to me. I mean, from the beginning, I never really I did banners and stuff. It was more of building my tutorial channel, which you're currently watching on. It was more of just building that brand from the ground up. Well, it's not very big to me. It was still an accomplishment just to be able to, again, make something that I made entirely myself and kind of building it from there. Really, I did work for a couple big YouTubers, but that was just because of the size of my channel at the time and that kind of stuff. And then like there's a few people I worked for in the past that had a couple million subscribers, such as Mini Lad and a few of his other friends and that kind of stuff. And really that kind of work was never something, I strived for. It was more just, again, it was for the paycheck, just because at the time I was in high school and college, so I just kind of needed money. But that's why I was still doing stuff on the side, doing other freelance projects and that kind of stuff. But transitioning from, personally, I like to think there was really never this transition. From the beginning, I always kind of tried to position myself to this higher degree. I kind of sound like an asshole, but to this higher degree of like the clients I was picking. And I think that can kind of show if you know any of my older work or that kind of stuff. Like it really I never just did banner work I really rarely did any banner work and that kind of stuff. I always was picking the clients that were doing more than just that with the branding, and really think of breaking down the brand from the ground up and that kind of stuff. So going from YouTube to freelance, there was never, like I said, like this big transition for me. And still to this day, I still get I still get recognition from having this online, I don't really know what to say.
It was more of like a gradual change, is what.
Yeah, it was more of like a gradual change. And there was never like this big change. And most of the people I've been doing freelance work with, such as Lightsaber with Nicholas and Paulo and all those other people associated with it, it was always working in line with with those kind of standards. We always were trying to do more than just what YouTube was offering us. So yeah. That was kind of a long-winded answer and didn't really get to the point, but I guess maybe you could talk a little bit more to it.
Yeah, I think my advice would be, this is kind of what I always went off of, is like, just spending a lot of time working on your craft is very important. And on top of that, picking your inspiration and your motivation carefully. So if you're pulling your inspiration from other people in your position, not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you want to get better and say you want to get out of YouTube or get out of freelance or anything, you need to kind of base your standards on what you're looking to get into. So kind of that break between YouTube and, like real world freelance work and working at big companies, you can't base your stuff off of what you're seeing on YouTube, because honestly, most of it is crap. If you look back on it now, and when I see that stuff, I'm like, oh my God, what were we doing? So you got to look, Dribble is like the best place. There's a community there to support you. You can reach out to people, and just like pulling your inspiration from there, from like the top things that you see in popular shots, is like a good way to do it. Because the way that I got started in pretty much anything at the beginning, when I was just learning it, whether it's branding, illustration, or UI, is copying things that are, like what are the standard and what are the best work that you see. Obviously, you don't post that stuff online, but like pulling that stuff and putting it side by side and trying to recreate that's literally how I got better. And you just pick up things like subconsciously and consciously, like how much margin should be here, how much spacing, what size font, what are some good fonts, how big should the images be, what kind of images should I be doing, and always being motivated to learn and looking for things to get you better, which I still do today, and I'm sure you do as well, Ryan. Just looking to always get better is the best way to do it. And like I was saying earlier, everything just works out.
Yeah. And now that I think about it, I guess the biggest transition I had personally between, I guess you could say, YouTube client work and I guess real world client work was I started to think about the work differently. It wasn't like I started to think about, why am I making this? What purpose is it serving? Like I started thinking, okay, I'm making this banner, but what am I trying to say with this banner? Or like, it sounds kind of like, very design oriented, but like it's really, I really changed. It was my mindset that changed. It was really, I started thinking about, okay, what purpose am I doing with this design, and is it helping anyone? And I'm not saying that all design has to help anyone, but like, is it serving a purpose, and is it benefiting me, or is it benefiting the client, or is it not benefiting anyone? And it was really just thinking, like really thinking before you design, because I think a lot of us, and that's what happens, but a lot of us, especially when we were younger, it was more just like, oh, I'm going to design something because it looks good. And it's really more than just, you know, making something look good. And I think that was the biggest transition for me. It was really changing the mindset of, you know, why am I making this? And I think, again, to answer your question or his question, I think that's my best answer, was my transitioning from YouTube to freelance work was just changing my mindset. And I think that happens with all designers. It doesn't have to be from YouTube or whatever. Like, eventually, like even the people we were talking about before, you know, that we went to school with, like eventually, if they keep at it, you know, it will click. And eventually, for all designers, it eventually clicks at some point to some type of degree. It will click, and things will just start to kind of make sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. I really do hope you guys enjoyed this session. If you want to check out any of his work, links will be in the description for his portfolios, websites, or just anything that he owns or he has made will be all down below for you guys to go check out. Again, thank you, Dennis, for coming on and talking. I really enjoyed it because I got a lot of insight about what you do. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as well. And I hope you got something out of it as well.
Yeah, man, this was a great experience. Thanks for having me on. I'm always open to interviews. I'd love to be on the show again if anybody else has anything else they want to hear from me from. Or if you guys want, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. My DMs are always open, and I'm always happy to help you guys out. And again, also make sure to check out my newsletter for my blog, because that's like a really good way to keep up with my work, both my side projects, my personal stuff, my full-time work. And yeah, thanks for having me on, Ryan.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. Like I said, everything will be in the description for you guys to go check out. And again, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.